Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bolton of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about. Georgia is in play for Democrats this November, my friends. That's the message we got from Georgia Representative Tanya Miller in today's podcast. But it won't be easy. Representative Miller shared a compelling on-the-ground report of the fight for democracy in her state, from gerrymandering to barriers to voting to fact-free legislative debates. She's an attorney who felt compelled to run for office after 2016. She's all in for public service and thinks you should be too. Enjoy. Georgia Representative Tanya Miller, welcome to An Honorable Profession. Wonderful to be talking to you today.
Thank you.
I want to hear so much about what you're up to, your path to public service, the efforts you're making in the Georgia legislature, but I have to start with a conversation about the presidential race. And Vice President Harris just held a big rally in Georgia. Seems to be a lot of energy. What's your sense of how things are looking on the ground?
Oh, man. The energy is palpable. Actually, the rally was like maybe 1,000 yards from my house at Georgia State. So it was very close. The lines were out the door. People were standing in line for hours to get in there. The energy was just insane. But I will tell you that ever since we got to this point, where Madam Vice President had the nod, had the support, stepped in to carry the mantle for us Democrats in Georgia. It is almost like we got an adrenaline shot. We're those of us who are true blue Dems, we're going to vote all the time, every time. But the energy was just different, and it's difficult to explain. And I certainly am a big fan of Joe Biden, the president, Uncle Joe, as we call him in my family. But you can just feel the energy that she has brought to the state, and in particular to, our most loyal base in Georgia in this party, and that's Black women. Black women are energized, they are focused, they are determined, and they are hard at work to get the vice president elected and to help her win Georgia. And I'll say this, for the first time in months, we truly feel deep down in our gut that Georgia is in play and that she will win this state. And I mean that sincerely.
I love that. Obviously, that changes the whole map if she can win Georgia and mobilize young voters of color in North Carolina and Georgia and these other states. I got to ask, just because you had the president trying to interfere in the last election count. You have had the legislature making efforts to make it more difficult for people to vote. What does the election administration in Georgia look like coming into 2024?
Well, we have sort of become used to every obstacle and hurdle that they throw at us. You will find that Democrats in Georgia are going to show up. They're going to wait. They're going to vote. They are determined to vote. It has become sort of a long-standing war between access to the ballot and efforts to restrict access to the ballot. Everybody is hip to it, as we would say, and the folks on the ground know it's coming. My constituents know it's coming. We expect it. And because we expect it, there's just a lot of education all the time around, how now can we make sure we're showing up at the ballot? Okay, we don't have as many early voting days, but here are the days, and let's make sure everybody knows it. This is the last day to send in your absentee ballot. If you need rides to the polls, these are the numbers you can call. If you have any problems at the polls, this is the voter protection hotline. So we have sort of become battle tested in this space of fighting for access to the ballot, and maintaining the same energy that we have traditionally had in the state as it has gone from red to purple to blue to purple. I expect us to continue to do that, but with more energy this time. And look, the Republicans are relentless. They are relentless down at the Capitol. I don't know how many voting bills, it was in the hundreds that were brought this past session. They are obsessed with finding new ways to make it harder for people to vote, which is just really one of the most bizarre things I have ever personally witnessed up front, up close and personal. But we're prepared for it, and I think with the energy that Madam Vice President is bringing to Georgia, is bringing to the base, you're going to see. I think voter turnout is going to be amazing. I hate using the word amazing. I feel like it's so overused, but I think it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited and really pumped, and the energy is so powerful here. They ain't gonna stop us from voting. Not for the first Black woman president in the history of the United States. No way.
I love it. Can you just tell us, for those of us not outside of Georgia, especially places like California, where we've seen it, just a lot of efforts to increase access to the ballot. What are some of the fights that you've had to have in the legislature just to try to keep the playing field level, much less increase access?
Yeah, so I think the first really big fights we were having were with this effort to purge voter rolls, to kick people off the voter rolls if they hadn't voted in X amount of time. So this sort of mass cleaning, and I'm doing air quotes, of the voter rolls is kind of how it started. And then Republicans figured out that expanded early voting, expanded mail-in vote, really inured to the benefit of Democrats, that we were voting, not just folks overseas, but everybody. And we were voting early. And so then you start to see restrictions to mail-in ballots, restrictions to early voting times. I think the amount of days that we have to early vote in the state just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which of course creates long lines when folks are sort of crammed into a shorter period of early voting. And, it obviously hurts working people, people who have to be at work from 9 to 5, or 8 to 4. And then they have to get their kids, and then they have to, so when you sort of crunch in the amount of time, you shrink it, it just makes it more challenging for people. And then you had silly things, right? Really cruel things like it's a crime to give someone water while they're waiting in line to vote. And as crazy as that may sound to my friends in California and in places where, the right to vote is respected and honored and cherished, that is the kind of legislation that actually passed, legislation in the state of Georgia that makes it a crime for you to give a person water while they're waiting in line to vote. So we've seen it run the gamut. They get more and more creative. I feel like every legislative session, they have managed to maintain their stronghold on state government. Of course, we have the Republican trifecta here. But, we are steadily fighting to make sure that this state becomes more and more democratic, right? Not just because I'm a Democrat, but because, we are the party that really cares about American values. And I think people are starting to see that. They have made Donald Trump their standard bearer. They really are doing themselves a disservice with the leadership and the messaging that they're choosing to hang their hat on. So we ain't no ways tired, as they say down south. I anticipate that all of their efforts to stifle the voice of their own citizens will be handily dealt with in November. I am speaking that because I truly, truly believe it.
I love that. May it happen. Let's talk a little bit about, it's one thing to vote. It's another whole thing to run, serve an office, be in the minority, be fighting these fights. Can you tell our listeners about your path to public service, how you found yourself in the middle of all these scrums for the future of democracy?
Yeah. Wow. I will tell you that, and I've been listening to the podcast, listening to so many New Deal leaders talk about their journey. So many folks just really sort of got their foot in the door of politics at an early age, got a taste of it interning on the Hill or working in local government. For me, it's really the opposite. I am new to politics. I have always been sort of a political junkie, very politically active, what we would call a super voter here. My political involvement prior to the decision to run, which I'll get to in a second, really was working campaigns, and not a bunch. I mean, most of the campaigns that I focused on, because, I'm a practicing lawyer, I focused a lot on DA races, solicitor races, judge races, supporting candidates who I thought were good with money and time, but really sort of a behind the scenes role. And I was quite happy with that, and then 2016 happened. And I remember distinctly sitting in a restaurant with some friends watching the results of the election and fully believing as we went in there that Hillary Clinton was going to be the first woman president of the United States. And as those the states started to come in, I think a lot of people have similar stories about this moment in history. And it became clear to me that we were electing Donald Trump to be the president of the United States. It was just a shock to my system. And as he started to roll out his policies, as culturally and socially, you just started to feel the weight of division, of strife, of all of the things that divide us, sort of getting all the attention and sucking all the air out of the room. It felt to me like all hands on deck. Like, no matter what you've been doing in the world of politics, in the world of policy, you need to do more. And so as we saw, that, we sort of started to have all of these rights that we took for granted being under attack in state houses, right? State houses, the places where, most everyday people don't pay a lot of attention to be honest with you. I still struggle to get people to engage on what's happening down at the Capitol. But it felt like the State House was ground zero for all of the rights that I have taken for granted, that I assumed my daughter would enjoy. And I just had to do something. So the lines got redrawn in 2022. My district, it was sort of a new district, kind of a Frankenstein district. The incumbent before me in the seat was running statewide. And it looked like an opportunity to get in the ring and to get on the front lines, because I truly felt then, and I feel now, even more so than I did when I got into this thing, that we are on the battlefield, that it is a battle, it is a fight. And when you are in the minority party, my God, it is a grueling fight, but, I put my hat in the ring and, started calling friends and family, had some connections in the political world just because I was always donating to campaigns and things like that, and became the candidate. And I said to myself, when I got on the campaign trail, of course, I'm a former prosecutor, tried a ton of cases, homicide prosecutor here in Atlanta, Fulton County, turned criminal defense lawyer and civil rights lawyer. So my life has been spent in the courtroom. And so, okay, I said, well, I'm going to make the case for why I should get the honor to serve in this position. And I did. And I spent a lot of time knocking on doors, talking to voters, a lot of time doing what we call call time, which is probably the closest to hell you will get in your life as a candidate, when you sit on the phone nonstop, calling everyone, asking them for money. It is painful, but we were very disciplined in that, and we raised a good bit of money. We outraised, I had two opponents. We outraised them combined, and we spent a lot of time on the ground canvassing. And I've come to sort of believe that, campaigns are won and lost on the ground. And that was my experience. I was relentless. I had a group of kids who were also equally relentless. And so at the end of the day, we won that race without a runoff. And that's not really to brag, but just to say that it solidified, my first race really solidified really what it takes to get a message out to people when you're an unknown person. I was an unknown person. I was known as a lawyer in certain communities, known around the courthouse very well, had done some TV stuff, was a legal analyst for a little bit. And but people didn't know me. And so I was running against two people who had name ID. And so I just believe it in my soul to anybody who's listening. If you love people, if you have passion for service, and if you're willing to do the work, I don't think there has been anything more rewarding that I have done in my career than running for office and getting the opportunity to represent 60,000 people, constituents. It's just a remarkable blessing.
I love that story. Can you compare the differences between being in the courtroom and serving in the legislature? Is it apples to apples, or is it an entirely different types of skills and experience that's required?
Totally different. Totally different. I think that was one of the first lessons I learned. I walked in like, I'm a lawyer. I try cases. I talk to juries. Like, you got facts, you got rules, you apply the facts to the rules, you make your case, you get the data, you get you just build your case. And then once you build a compelling case, people will come. Not so much, right? So politics is really a different animal, right? People don't lead with necessarily what the evidence is. People lead with how they feel. People lead with connection. People lead with emotion. Emotion dominates politics. And so that's one thing that I learned. Like you can marshal all the facts, you can wonk out on policy, you can do all of those things, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a win, quote unquote, again, in politics. Like you got to connect with people on a human level. It requires you to show who you are, and who you are has to connect with who they are. So that's very different. And so the work for me was getting out of that very lawyerly structure of thinking about problems, and persuading, using the skills of persuasion that, we hone as lawyers into a different kind of persuasion, into a different kind of connection, and making a different kind of case. And I would say, facts don't always matter in politics. Right? Like, you'll have someone on the other side saying something that just absolutely is not true. But there's no judge there. There are no rules of evidence there. There's no framework for really testing what people say and what people put forth in a way that just kind of makes it clear to everybody. And so people can say just about anything, and it doesn't have to be true, and there's no one there to check them. And so you have to become when you're a person who likes rules, right? Which I do, and you like frame. I like rules. I like order. I like data. I like facts. And I don't just say things that are true. I can't. It's not even in me to do that, But people do, and they are quite successful in politics, believe it or not. And so that was definitely. A shift, and I think a difference between those two. I mean, there is overlap, right? Being a lawyer helps when you're making laws. It helps a lot in committee, when you are really testing legislation and you have experience. For me, it's experience in, the criminal code and criminal jurisprudence and understanding what the law means and how it works in practice. So there are uses to it. And certainly, having oratory skills, right? Being able to stand up in the well and make speeches. Yeah. A lawyer used to doing that. That's certainly helpful, but it's like apples and mangoes.
Yeah. And sometimes like maybe the mangoes aren't so fresh. Maybe they're rotten.
At all.
Can you talk about how then with the new challenge of existing in this world, like what have been your legislative priorities? And then, how do you operate in a minority where you're not allowed to set an agenda and you're not allowed to move your priorities through the system?
Boy, is it hard. It is hard. It is one of the most challenging things I think I have done professionally. No matter how right you believe you are, no matter how much you can demonstrate objectively that what you're saying makes sense, if you ain't got the votes, it doesn't matter, right? And so it's very, very difficult. And I think what some of us have learned to do, and as I sort of develop in my style as a legislator, you sort of get your lane, right? And so my lane has developed, for the most part, pretty sharply in committee. And I am on what we call Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, which is the committee that vets all criminal laws. And so because I was fortunate enough to get put on that committee, and because I've had so much time and experience kind of on the front lines of criminal justice, I'm really able to shine. And I'm really able to earn the respect of my colleagues on the other side. And so I have enjoyed really being able to shape legislation at the committee level. And, our mantra is to prevent harm, to stop bad bills, to pull out all the stops for bad bills. That's the main thing that we focus on in the minority, and we all have our roles in that. I also have focused on some criminal justice stuff, but again, it's very difficult as a Democrat to have your name at the top of a piece of legislation that will get through committee and will get through the House, and then we'll cross over to the Senate. And that place is, if you think the House is crazy, boy, the Senate is a wild place here in Georgia. But it's just a difficult exercise. So what we do is we use the media. We use public engagement. I write a lot of op-eds. I do a lot of interviews. I talk directly to the people about our policies and, confront what Republicans are doing. So we fight, I think, as legislators, because we don't have the numbers in the House, we take the fight outside the House. And we use our platform to really draw contrast between a lot of these policy things that are happening down at the Capitol that most people don't even know. And we try to make sure that they know what's going on and, that they're aware of it. And we're just sort of building a slow case against the Republican majority. And we keep getting closer. We're hoping to pick up some seats, and I think we will pick up some seats this time around. And we're slow walking it, but with gerrymandering and the way our districts are built, it's a long, hard battle. But we're in it. And, I never was more familiar with the term, understood really at a visceral level, the concept of gaslighting, until I was elected to the General Assembly and being in the minority party. I'm in Atlanta. Atlanta's a Black city. It's the Mecca, right? It's the city too busy to hate. Largely progressive city, a Democratic stronghold. Our mayor's Black. Chief of police is not Black, but we've had multiple chiefs of police. Our chief of police is an openly gay man. We have multiple people on the commission who are Black. Our district attorney, Madam DA Fonnie Willis, is Black. So you get comfortable in that kind of political space because you're really just dealing with the issues there. It's like psych ops, right? It's like Republicans will do things and they will bring up policy and they will hide motivations and intentions behind legislation, and you know what they're doing. But you can't, it's just very difficult to be bombarded by it day after day after day and putting your finger in the dam and just trying to stop the onslaught of terrible policies that they push through. And it's at the end of session, I'll tell you, you're exhausted. You just literally probably sleep for at least a week and have to readjust your mind. But anyway, I'm rambling on, but it sounds bad, but
Yeah.
it really isn't as bad as it sounds because you get to be in the fight. You get to be at the table. You get to witness it. And you get to, it's like you have a testimony, right? Because you've gone through it, and you put your heart in it and you put your body between them and your constituents. And you just do the best you can and you just keep fighting, living to fight another day.
Can you talk a little bit about the structural disadvantage that you're at with gerrymandering and the barriers to the ballot that have been created, so that even if you get a majority of Georgians who agree with you and want your policies or don't want the Republicans' policies, you're still going to be at a disadvantage in seats. How do you overcome that? As you said, that's a decades long potential fight to have. How are you trying to address it?
Well, the thing that Republicans know, really, really, really like deep down in their core, is that this state is changing and it is changing fast. The demographic shifts that are just natural shifts are happening at a pace. So we are racing to get our people engaged, to get our people to the polls, to turn out votes, so that by the time we are doing our census again and the maps are being redrawn, we will be in the majority. And we will, we believe that we will take the House first. The Senate will be a little bit tougher. But certainly there are so many close districts. We have 78. It's 180 members in the General Assembly. 78 are Democrats. We need to get to 91. And we're not that far away. I mean, we may pick up 2 to 3 seats, and then we just have to keep pushing. And so it's like a race to the next redistricting session. And, my hope is that we will continue to focus, laser focus, not so much on the crap they're doing in the General Assembly, because they're going to do it. They're going to bring terrible policies. We fight it, but that's not the real fight. The real fight is taking a House and getting to the place where we can get maps that are actually fair to the citizens of this state. So, it's a numbers game, right? So we have to focus on close seats. There are enough of them. And we have to continue to engage the unengaged. Because I think if we did that, would be a no-brainer, right? We have such a small percentage of people who are eligible to vote who actually show up and vote. So it's a battle to engage people, to make people understand why it matters. And it's a race to the next redraw.
How do you balance, because Georgia is, at least in name, a part-time legislature. It's not when you're campaigning and representing people and helping constituents, but you're also practicing law, representing the public employees. How do you balance the demands of your profession with the demands of your service, with the demands of your life?
Man, it's hard. It's actually hard. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like it is definitely a challenge, right? I think we make, as legislators here in Georgia, somewhere around 20,000, 22,000. I think it went up from 17,000 a couple years ago. We have 40 legislative days a year that we are down at the Capitol where we make all the laws. Those legislative days are spread between January and usually the end of March, very early April. And so during that period of time, you are completely out of pocket for whatever your day job is, right? So you kind of have to adjust and prepare for the time that you are actually physically in the seat, unable to do any work, unable to go to court and do all that stuff. When you're out of session, it really is just a matter of getting good people around you. I have had to scale down my practice. I recently got appointed to be general counsel for the Georgia Federation of Public Service Employees. An amazing job, an amazing opportunity. We're so aligned in so many ways. So that will bring some stability to my sort of professional life. But it's not easy. And I do think that it gives an unfair advantage to people who are retired or people who are independently wealthy. But a lot of everyday average Georgia citizens who might want to serve would have a very difficult time doing it. So it's not easy, but it's worth it. And because I'm a lawyer, I've had my own practice, I've just been able to kind of juggle it and make it work.
Can you, just make the pitch for some young attorney, some young professional, especially in a red, purple state, who looks at this and it's like, I don't love where my state is going, and I think I want to make an impact, but I'm not sure politics is the way. What, you have a lot, you're a very talented person. You could do a lot of things with your life. What made you choose this path, and why should others do the same?
Well, look, for me, it was really a no-brainer, right? One, because my entire career really has been centered around people, around being a voice for, an advocate for, a frontline soldier for everyday people, whether it was as a prosecutor representing crime victims, or a defense attorney representing citizens, one citizen at a time, or a civil rights lawyer representing citizens whose rights have been violated by government actors. It's always been about people. And for me, it's never been about money. It just never has been. Now that I'm getting older, I'm at times regret that. but if I'm being really true to myself, really honest with myself, for me, this was a logical extension of the work that I have always done. And that is using my talents for whatever they're worth, my time, to help people, And so I view this as scaling that. I view this as an opportunity to help even more people, right? And it's exciting for me. And so I think all public service requires a sacrifice, and it requires you to really have the heart to serve your community. As cheesy as that sounds, that is, if you don't have that, wouldn't be worth it for sure. But if you feel compelled, if you feel called to offer something in service of the folks who are your constituents, your neighbors, your friends, your family, then I say do it. There really isn't anything more rewarding. To me, a legacy, a life spent trying to make the lives of people better, and the potential to make the lives of so many people better, like having history remember me for that, is way more important than how much money is in my bank account when I leave this place. So if you feel that, like if you're driven by that, then this is probably the thing for you to do. If you are not driven by that, there are all kinds of ways that you can be engaged in shaping public work and law and policy. But whatever it is, I mean, you say an honorable profession. I mean, my God, it is an honorable profession. You ain't gonna get rich doing it, but you certainly, at the end of the day, hopefully, God willing, you're a credit to your people, you're a credit to your community, and everybody will say to you, job well done. And for me, that is what it's all about.
Well, you're a credit. I believe you are a credit to your community. You're also a credit to New Deal. We love having you as part of the network. The talent that comes out of Georgia and the New Deal is extraordinary, and it's always fun to hear the folks that we have fighting these fights on the very front lines for not only your state, but really for the whole country and the world. Thank you for taking the time today, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at New Deal for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.